I'm not where I'm supposed to be. I'm going in
Hey, I'm Danielle
circles,
Davies, and you're
going
listening to
in
Roar, a
circles.
show that
I
amplifies
should
the
get
voices of women
away
breaking
from
barriers, leading
here.
change, and
There's a
making real
better
impact.
place for me,
Keep listening for bold
better
ideas and
place for
stories that
me.
inspire you to
Trying to
find your
play my
voice and make some
symphony,
noise.
but there's so much.
Every 60 seconds, 9 people in the United States are sexually assaulted. That's 4.7 million rapes each year. But the people behind the Fund to Prevent Sexual Assault believe sexual violence is preventable. Your support helps fund programs that empower young people, train leaders, and create safer spaces for everyone. Prevention starts with action. Visit preventsa.org to learn more and donate today. Hi, I'm Danielle Davies. Today on Roar, I'm joined by a true pioneer in the world of creative advocacy, Shaney Jo Darden, founder and global creative officer of the Keep Abreast Foundation. For the past 25 years, Shaney Jo has been reshaping the way we talk about breast health, blending art, activism, and education to reach people where they are, especially young women, creatives, and communities often left out of traditional health conversations. From the iconic breast cast movement to global awareness campaigns, her work has empowered millions to take charge of their health and challenge the stigma around breast cancer. As Keep Abreast celebrates its 25th anniversary year, Shaney Jo is doubling down on her mission to expand access, build community, and inspire a new generation of advocates. Whether you're a longtime fan of her work or hearing about her for the first time, get ready for a conversation that I'm sure is going to be bold, creative, and deeply impactful. Welcome, Shaney.
Yay! Thank you. That was fun.
And should I say Shaney Jo or Shaney? Do you prefer?
Shaney Jo,
Okay, either or.
whatever flows off your tongue.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'm excited. I was saying to Shani before we press record, we booked this so long ago that I feel like I've been like chomping at the bit to ask you questions. So let's just start at the beginning. You founded this concept. You founded Keep Abreast 25 years ago. First, can you tell us what it is for people who don't know, and then what sparked this idea?
Well, Keep Abreast is a nonprofit organization, but it's so much more than that, right? It's a community, it's an art project, it's a support group, it's a way for, people to be engaged in their own activism and in their own breast health, but really we're a nonprofit organization and our mission is all around early detection of breast cancer. And so this is not anything I ever thought I would be doing with my life. I never planned on this. It was just one of those things that, how life is, right? And I had a
Totally.
career in fashion, and then I had a friend who had breast cancer, and that's how it all started. Like, when something happens to someone you care about, something happens within you, right? And all of us are different, but we want to help. And how do we do that, right? We are these days we have GoFundMe, we have all these things, but 25 years ago we didn't have that. So I was like, well, I know how to do art shows. I have a bunch of friends who are artists. Let's just bring our community together and raise some money and have fun, have a party, have an art show. Let's have bands, let's make it fun. So it was really just that. Keep Abreast just started as this one-time art show, casting boobs, by the way. It was an art show of boobs, not your any day old art show. And yeah, that was it, just a one-time thing. And it has just grown organically and purposefully and mission driven ever since then.
I love that you're like, and it wasn't just any art show. Were you the only caster of boobs, or is there a group of you that can do this work?
There's just me. I am the only caster. I created the concept, and
Okay.
there is another caster in Keep Abreast has an affiliate in Europe. Keep Abreast Association. Our office is in south of France, and so I do train someone who's also an artist in France to do castings there. But over all the 25 years, I have pretty much done every single cast.
And do you paint the cast also, or how does that process work? I'm gonna have to show
No.
pictures at the beginning of
You're
what
gonna
you do.
have to show pictures. Yeah, I mean, they're each one. I've made thousands, right? And each one is completely unique, and they're painted by contemporary artists, professional artists. So whenever we're doing an exhibition, we curate the castees, the people that are being casted, but we also curate the artists to go together to make an exhibition.
Do the artists ever meet the castees, just out of curiosity?
Sometimes they know them. We always give them, the artist, like their profile or their Instagram. Like back in the day, we didn't have any of that. But we
Right.
always tell the artist who they have. And sometimes we'll let the castees choose their artist as well.
Oh my gosh. Okay. It's so special because I mean, the thing is, I mean, I feel like art is special too. First of all, I just have to say, like, I love my mom, but she'll like do a room and then she's like, okay, I have to go to like Home Goods to find something that matches. And I'm like, you right, that's one kind of picture on the wall, but that's not the same as art, which has like meaning and development and
Exactly.
skill, but mostly meaning behind it. And this has so much meaning behind it. It's really special that you get to pair people up sometimes, or that they have that opportunity to be paired up.
Yeah, and art moves you. Art is the ultimate communicator without words.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's a way for us to start conversations. It's a way for us to break taboos. It's a way for us to get our message out there in a way that is creative and is engaging and draws you in.
Absolutely. And you talk a lot about when you started this 25 years ago, we didn't have these things. And it is crazy because we are really that like in that generational spot where we've gone from like
Yeah.
nothing, we didn't even have like I was telling the story the other day. I'm like, and we didn't have cell phones. Like when we were lost, we were like legitimately lost.
We had the
There was
talk
no,
guide.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. So, how did you go from, the idea and like this one event to being a global movement?
Well, we were invited. We got invited. And so by doing this one thing, it was so unique and it was so special. We got a lot of attention. And because of my background in fashion, I worked in the skateboarding industry. A lot of the brands and a lot of the companies were like, whoa, Shaney, that is amazing. Like, one of the brands we originally worked with was Roxy, the surf brand. And Roxy's like, we love that. Do you want to come to Hawaii with us and do an exhibition and cast all, the athletes? So I'm like, okay, yeah. Roxy really brought us to Hawaii, to Tahiti, to China, to England. Like Roxy brought us all around the world and they still partner with us today. So shout out to Roxy because they are totally awesome. But also, like, we were invited early on to be part of the Vans Warp Tour. So we got our message out literally to thousands and thousands of teenagers every single day in a punk rock music festival setting where they're having the best day of their lives, but they're like, whoa, what's that? They get to learn about something too while they're having fun, while they're in a space where they're open to learning.
And and I'm just thinking about having once been young, like being at these things. The cast themselves are such like they're memorable. That's
Yeah.
not something you're gonna forget, even if you just see one, like, and you're passing it by. But I imagine if there's a bunch of them, you're really like it's moving and it's poignant and it's powerful. And are you casting women, um, all of whom have had breast cancer? Are they in a treatment process? Are they healthy? How do you select who you're casting?
I mean, I've casted women, I've casted men. Men can also get breast cancer, so it's a way to have that conversation. And it really depends on the exhibition and how it's curated. So I've had some exhibitions where the casts are only survivors, only women who have been impacted, or we've had some exhibitions where it's only, professional athletes like surfers or snowboarders or skaters. So it really just depends on the particular exhibition and where we're having it. What is the message of that exhibition?
I love how you took like you're the foundation, like basically your DNA of creativity. And so let me back up. So many people, I just had another interview today and we were talking about the fact that like a lot of times people are like, I want to get involved in something. And then they're like, but I don't want to run for office. And you're like, there's like 100 billion things in between that you could do. And sometimes it's as easy as like, and this morning we were saying like dropping off a meal for your local candidate or, something really tangible and small, but that's going to help make an impact that day. But there's so many things you can do, like leaning on your own creativity. I'm just so curious about so you had a background in fashion, but how did the casting part start? Like, and why do you think it resonated so deeply in those early days?
Well, I think it's important, kind of what you were mentioning is like this lens. Like each of us has our own unique lens of how we were raised, where we came from, what type of schooling we had, however you were, so like I took my lens through action sports kind of culture and applied it in a nonprofit way that was completely unique because I had no idea how to start a nonprofit or
I
what that even meant, like what's a 501(c)(3)? Like,
was like, isn't the paperwork enough to
oh my
just be
God,
like, oh
the
yeah.
work of a nonprofit is like ridiculous. But yeah, and I just did it in the only way I knew how, which was from more of a punk rock way, DIY way of doing things, and with the casts, I was originally inspired by Frida Kahlo, because I've always been a huge fan of Frida. And there's all those iconic images of her where she's, lying in her bed and she's painting her own cast. And to me, she was such a beautiful representation of creating beauty out of tragedy, and if you've read about Frida, if you know about Frida, she experienced, physical trauma, which is why she was wearing that cast, but also, she had a lot of trauma in her life that she continued to produce something beautiful out of that. And that also is like what happens when people have cancer or something serious happens to people. A lot of times there's real beauty and awareness that comes out of those moments.
Absolutely. And I think about even like my own experiences in life. And sometimes when things have got, your own tragedies for me, and maybe this is unique to some, but like I always am like, I need to make something because it's like something is not happening. So you got to bring something else into the world. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
something's leaving and you
make,
just have to,
unmake, like throw it all into the ethers, like
yeah,
it,
yeah.
you have to move through it.
Yeah, and I feel like those casts especially show that because did you ever go to Washington D.C. and see my favorite artwork or portraiture or sculpture in Washington D.C. is actually the Korean War exhibit where there are these soldiers that are cast and they are just ever so slightly larger than life. Like each one's probably 6.5 or 7 feet tall and they're walking like you're walking right next to them and there they are, but they're frozen in time and it's so powerful. And I feel like I get that same feeling with these casts, like you're freezing a moment, like literally capturing it. So anyway, I'm rambling. Let me ask you another question. When you've, like you've said, been around a long time, 25 years you've been doing this, how has, besides the fact that we can promote things in different, like so many different ways now than we used to, how have you seen the conversation around breast health shift, especially when it comes to younger people or marginalized communities? I know that like 25 years ago, we were kids. I remember a little bit like, breast self-exam, but there wasn't a huge focus. I don't even think the Susan G. Komen Foundation was out. Or if it was like, you just, now there's so much out there. There's so much accessibility. There's so much information. What have you seen, as kind of a founder in terms of shifts?
In terms of shifts, I mean, social media has played a huge role. There's this beautiful thing now where there are influencer survivors. Like,
Oh,
how
okay.
cool is that? There's survivors out there that are brave enough to use their platforms to tell their story, to encourage other people to, whether it is to do their self-check, but there's so many niche things about going through cancer that literally the community itself, the cancer community on social media, is taking care of. They're talking about things that doctors are never going to tell you. They're never going to talk to you about it. They're talking about things that you don't see in the news. You don't hear people talking about that. Only someone who's lived it is going to tell you about, like where I live. I live out in like a rural area and my house is on the septic. So I didn't know this, but someone recently was just talking about how chemotherapy completely screws up your septic system, because all of that, medicine and everything is going through, your shower, your toilet, all of this stuff. And so you need to maintain your septic. I mean, this is a weird conversation, but you need to maintain your septic.
No. Yeah.
It's just one example of, like, I learned that on social media. So it's really beautiful, the community that can rally around the survivor community. It's like, to me, that's been really incredible. And the survivors themselves are the ones who are leading this conversation, and people are listening. And it's important because the mainstream media, doctors, everyone has their foot in the game for a different reason, so you're getting it straight from, the people who are really experiencing it. And I appreciate that so much.
Yeah, and I feel like, years ago, my sister realized she had like almost like an orphan disease. There was something, and that's where she found the most information was in a Facebook group, because it's like corralling people from all across the world and they're sharing their experiences. It's, there's a lot to be said about social media, good and bad. But in terms of like collective experiences and sharing knowledge, if you've had years ago, what were you going to do? Like send letters to everybody you knew? Like, what would you possibly do? What did we use? Like a party line? I mean, what could you do now? People can access, this is going off the rails. People can
breast cancer party line.
This is where you get your information. But like now you can access so much stuff. And I have a friend who created a movement, a project out of her experience as a breast cancer survivor. And I'm going to be talking to her for the podcast at some point too, because it's just been so amazing to watch her transform her crisis, her tragedy, into like this thing that benefits all these women, and using her own story and being like willing to share it over and over. I mean, some people would like to stay away from that, sharing their own story all the time and kind of reliving this difficult thing. But she's down for it, and it's impressive. And I feel like that's got to be a lot of your audience. Like,
yeah, and for your friend, it's her own healing.
Yeah.
She's pulled or drawn to give in this way, ultimately because her soul is calling that. Her soul wants that, so it's her own healing as well, which is that magic sparkle of being of service, right? She's giving all this to other people, but it's coming back to her own healing in a much bigger way.
Absolutely. And you mentioned like this stuff like that's coming out, even whether it's the septic system or, any kind of lived experience story that you're not going to hear from doctors. And I am sure, as somebody who's like kind of really in this world, that has to be a frustration that like you can't just access all this information at a doctor's office. Are there other systems or cultural norms that you're hoping to see fixed or that frustrate you when it comes to breast health awareness or women's health in general?
I was just having this conversation the other day with Dr. Christy Funk. I met her in her office the other day, and she's an amazing breast surgeon in LA. And medical doctors aren't trained about diet. They're not trained about nutrition. So, and when their patients ask them about, alternative care or diet or certain things like that, they don't have answers. And a lot of times, because they don't know, they just steer you away from the question in the first place. So the major thing, to answer your question, that I would love to see changed is in the education of medical doctors. There needs to be part of their degree, their education, their training that includes a more holistic approach to their patients, diet, and mental health specifically. Patients aren't given resources for their mental health, for their own mental health, let alone the mental health of their families, their partners, their children, their best friends. So there's a gap that's missing, and we can't rely on the doctors to fill that gap themselves. It needs to start at the beginning in education.
I've talked to people, a lot of people in like the menopause space and different women's health areas, and it's crazy what doctors are not taught in medical school. I mean, they'll tell you, we spent like a day on menopause. Like,
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
I feel like that's like that's like a year's worth of information right there. I mean, there are now doctors and organizations building entire, I hate to say brands, but entire business models just based on just menopause or just perimenopause, because that's how big and important it actually is. It's like we have to break down the specialties. Like OBGYN is just huge,
Right.
And that's where we get so much of our care as women. Can you share a story, one that really stayed with you from someone who's been impacted by your work?
Oh gosh, you put me on the spot with that one.
I'm sorry. It could be your first, your friend who you started it with if you want, but that's.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely good. I mean, Keep Abreast I founded this organization with my friend Mona, and she's a cancer survivor now, but not when we started Keep Abreast. We both know each other from the action sports industry. She worked at a snowboarding magazine, and so when we first started Keep Abreast, like Mona and I, we had another organization before that doing art exhibitions. So we were like, well, we like to throw parties. We like bringing our friends together. So that was the beginning. And today still, like Mona, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. Right now, I think she might be, oh man, at least like 12 years out. And her mother also had breast cancer. So her and she still deals, that's the thing, is like she's like my best friend, and so many people through the time of Keep Abreast that I've gotten to know. It's not like you're ever really healed a lot of the times, whether it's mental or physical. Like she still has to get scans on a regular basis. There's always this fear of like, is it coming back? How am I living my life now? How do I want to live my life? So it's it's just like the shittiest thing to to have happen, because a lot of times, people have to have multiple surgeries and things like that. So I think for me, it really just always comes back to like, how are you supporting your community? How are you supporting yourself? How are you supporting, your caregivers and the people around you in a time of crisis? That's where it really shows like the value of your own salt, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you just said too, like how are you taking care of your community, but also yourself? Like, how do you take care of yourself? Like, what does this self-care look like for you when your job is centered around this? And it's, a lot of people want to just like, a lot of people that I know even are like, I'm just going to tune it all out, just hope for the best and tune it out, everything, the news, the world, like all these things. But when you're in it, you can't help, like you just said, it's the shittiest thing and you see it all the time. Like, how are you kind of protecting that internal dialogue of your own from just kind of running away with that? Like, and you know what I mean? Like, it would have to scare you or get in your head. I mean, how do you keep yourself going through this?
Yeah, I think when you are inundated on a daily basis with information about breast cancer, new studies, this kind of thing, but then this like heady side of it, but then you're also inundated on a like daily basis with like everyone you know texting you about their friend who was just diagnosed, or their coworker, or what their mother's going through, you know, through the DMs, through emails, through Instagram, like all these things. So it's like it's my job to be present. It's my job to be empathetic. It's my job to not become like numb from hearing the same thing all the time, you know, because each person's story is unique. And I have a pretty crazy self-care routine, you know, but also I really always take a moment to protect my energy, you know, especially in public spaces where people are coming, you know, whether we have an event or things like that, and people are coming up to me, you know, there's like keep a breath Shaney, and then there's also like Shaney. So it's the same person, but there's also two different things. So I can, when I'm working in public in an event type situation, I'm keep a breath Shaney. And there, for me, that's a way to protect me, like my little scared person inside of me, you know, but it's also a way to be really present. And I always will like really listen to people, look at them in the eye, but I'll create like different techniques where I'm like put a pink bubble around myself for the day, and I imagine that it's like glittery and shiny and beautiful, and then if people are telling me about, you know, like the list is long of all the things that you could say are horrible or bad, you know, and I'll just imagine their words going over my head and like washing over me and going behind me, but still staying present. But I'm not like absorbing their sadness or their sickness or their experience. I'm not absorbing it into me. I'm just letting it float over me. And that has helped me stay healthy.
Is that something you learn to do as you, because I think a lot of people, a lot of the women that I speak to are either, I mean, they're either been doing something like for a while that is making an impact in some way, or they might be new to it. And so I imagine at the beginning you were less skilled in like that boundary setting, and it was like impactful like every time. And I mean, it guts you. I imagine that it guts you, because just as a human being hearing these stories, you're like, oh, I mean, if you read the news too much, sometimes I'm like, you know, and that's not people just coming to tell me their stories. So how did you learn to do these things, these self-care practices to kind of keep yourself in a safe space, but also one where you can keep giving?
Like you said, it guts you. That's the key thing, right? And it happened to me where I was like literally gutted. I was sick. I wasn't feeling well. My stomach was hurting. There was some energy stuck inside my physical body, and I did not feel well. And you know, I've studied, I've done my, you know, yoga teacher training. I've done a lot of, you know, breath work facilitation things. So like part of my life is always working with alternative healers and things like that. And I had, you know, gone to someone for support, and I was like, something's wrong. Like, I don't feel good. And they're, you know, I did like Reiki and energy work, and they're like, you are holding other people's stuff inside you. You're holding other people's stories, traumas, sicknesses in your body. They're like, don't do that ever again. Never again. Do not hold other people's stuff inside of your body. And so we practice some things like that. Like there's many different little rituals that you can do to protect yourself in those spaces, you know? And another one that I do is like kind of just brush my body, and I just say like, not this body and not this lifetime, you know, because like I need to be healthy and strong to do the work that I'm doing, you know? So just be like, not this body, not this lifetime. Like cancer is not coming over here, you know, and just doing these little things. Like they're woo woo, but they help me.
You know what? And it's so funny because they might be woo woo, but they help. And I feel like everybody's got their woo woo thing, like whether you're all in or did you ever watch Ted Lasso?
I did.
When I was just watching it, and Rebecca's like, when I go into, and she seems so tall and powerful, and she's like, so, you know, I mean, obviously we see the vulnerable side of her as like watchers of the show, but you know, she seems so together and so sophisticated and she's like, when I go into a room, she's like, when I hear my trick, it's like I make myself big, and and these things work. Like
It works.
they are, they might seem a little bit woo woo, like you said, they might be a little bit like not super mainstream, like sit up tall, not everybody's going to go into like a crouching dragon type of thing, but like it
But you
works.
can.
But you can, and if you do it, you can utilize that, and it's like an extra thing in your back pocket. So thanks for sharing that, because I feel like I think anybody who's in the field, in the work of doing hard work for other people, is putting themselves in like an emotionally vulnerable position over and over again, and it can get to the point where you can become useless because you can't do it anymore. So to prevent that from happening, you've got to really take care.
It's true. And culturally, even in like the business world, like culturally being a manager in a corporate type of business environment is different now than it used to be. You can't just like rail off on people who are doing a bad job anymore. You
Right.
have to, um, the style is now to be, constructive and supportive of your staff, to help them get the most out of them, so the culture of communication and management on difficult things has also changed a lot.
Which is good. I just hope I think it depends too on your part of the country and your world, like how much of that you're seeing. So you're in California, right?
California.
You're in California. You're like the first to see it. I'm in New Jersey, which isn't bad all the time, but I'm in like a very small corner of like this tiny little area of South Jersey. And even like I do an interior design column for a magazine, and I'm always laughing because we generally tend to be one season behind everywhere else, like every urban area that we're near, because we're near Philadelphia, New York, but like we're like the next season we catch on to what they were doing. Do you know what I mean?
Oh
So
yeah.
in terms of that, that's like gotta spread out. But I think there's a lot of good things happening in that arena, like in taking care of ourselves and the people around us. Would you
Yeah.
have any other like advice for how people could be better allies in this space, even if it's that, like taking care of yourself, but whether they're survivors, supporters, or newcomers to the space?
Yes. I mean, ally, I love that ally has become like a very popular word, right? And especially with social media and these types of things, supporting different communities by sharing, that's a big thing, is like sharing other people's voices. Sure, that's like tipping your toe in allyship, but really, to me, allyship is about asking questions and trying at least first to educate yourself on certain topics, and then, if you do have questions, reaching out to someone that is going to really help answer them for you in a way that helps you be an ally, where there is, I feel like, whether it's like, different underserved communities, you don't want to, it's not on us to learn about, what it means to be a Black or Asian breast cancer survivor. Like I need to do my own research to learn how to serve communities of color who have breast cancer. But at the same time, we have, a group of survivors who are women of color who help inform our work. Same thing with working with breast cancer survivors. We try to always make sure we run our anything we put out in the world that's like data, like how to check yourself, or scientific information about chemicals and beauty products and cleaning products and all these things that are linked to causing cancer. It's never just like what I think or what I feel. We always want to run things by experts to make sure that it's actually factual scientific information, but also, that it's going to hit. It's not going to be a miss. We don't want to hurt people or offend people, but Keep Abreast is an organization that is outspoken. We talk about what breast cancer is like with the LGBTQ community. We posted things just about, Trans Awareness Day the other day. And obviously, of course, we got a lot of stupid people commenting on that because of how divided our country is at this moment, you know, with the trans community. But it's like, trans people get breast cancer, we're going to talk about it. Keep a Breast is not afraid to talk about those things, you know. So working with people in those communities is important to us, and being a helpful voice. Keep a Breast wants to be a helpful voice to talk about things that, you know, other mainstream cancer organizations are not talking about.
I was just going to say, so are they not talking about these things all the time?
I
This
mean,
is
I didn't look, but I didn't see, you know, Susan G. Komen posting about, you know, Trans Visibility Day and breast cancer. I didn't see it, but that doesn't mean it wasn't there, you know.
got
So
it. But it's great that there is like a place like yours that has this. And are there resources? Because I know you, like you said, when we put something together for educational purposes, are people able to get physical resources, like besides the casting, obviously, which is like that's like the draw, right? Like you see that's like the visual component that's behind everything, and it's it can be a moneymaker and all these things. But is there a way you're disseminating information to people as well, or is it through social media? I know you mentioned a newsletter earlier, but what resources can people look to you to get if they want to like sign up or kind of come to you for information?
yeah, we have an awesome website, and in our like education section, we have specific pages dedicated to male breast cancer. So you can go there and learn specifically about that. We have specific pages dedicated to the LGBTQIA plus community. We have specific pages dedicated to the women of color community, because they're different communities. They need different information. They need to be spoken to in different ways. And on all those pages, you will find a lot of resources for each community. There's not that many resources for men with breast cancer. So, you know, there are areas where, you know, we need more. We need more science. We need more resources. We need more support. But yeah, so on our website, you can find specific sections that you can go and learn more about different communities and how cancer impacts those communities. And also there's like a basic breast cancer 101, like here's the basics, you can learn about that. And then in our blog section, we have amazing blogs about, you know, lymphedema, what are, you know, how do you know your risk? How can you reduce your risk? What does breast cancer mean for if you're, you know, young, a teenager? What should you be thinking about? If you're in your 20s, if you're in your 30s, if you're in your 40s, like what are the different things you should be thinking about and doing at those different stages of your life? So our blog is an awesome resource, and yeah, we try to
Oh,
do
that's
as
awesome.
best as we can. We're small, like we're a small organization, you know, like we do a lot of work globally, but we're really small. So we try to do the best that we can with limited resources.
But that's all you can do. And I feel like I'm so inspired by you because, like you said, this wasn't the field that you were going into, you know, and now you're an expert on this, you know, through no really wanting to be, but you just are. And congratulations. Also, and I'm going to include links in the show notes to the website and all that kind of stuff too, so people have the access to those resources, because I haven't heard of other places having all of those resources, especially when you talk about, you know, I feel like there's such a stigma with men with breast cancer. I don't know if it's a stigma or if it's like just an embarrassed feeling you've heard, but people are not very aware of it. They don't talk about it. It's not part of the conversation when we all wear pink and it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Nobody's saying anything about the men that can get it. So I appreciate that you do. And you're celebrating a huge milestone, obviously, 25 years. When you look back, is there anything you can say you're the most proud of? Besides
The thing,
all these things you told us?
I mean, the thing that I am most proud of is that Keep a Breast started a conversation with a generation that was never, ever, 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 ever talked to before about their breast cancer risk. And that is awesome. Nobody talked to young people about doing their self-check or about prevention or about early detection or about the environmental links to causing cancer. Nobody talked about that. We did. And that hopefully tells me that there will be a future of more educated people. Because, you know, my mom is like a hippie. She's a super open person, and she wasn't even talking to me about that stuff. So, like, the generation after me, my hope is that they, because of Keep Abreast, because they met us at the Warp Tour, because they met us at a surf contest, because they saw us in some gallery somewhere, like that generation has information that I didn't have. And that my mom didn't have, and that her mom didn't have. So my hope is that, yeah, they have education and information that will ultimately lead to less deaths because of early diagnosis, and just more knowledge about their own body and being their own advocate. And it's not just about their breasts, you know, it's about everything in their life.
Yeah, it's, that whole holistic piece of medicine that I feel like we've got all these specializations. And like, then I just was like, oh, we need to be even more specialized. But really, it also needs to be like holistic, because you need the whole thing. Like, what you're putting in is what you're getting out, and like all of that. And like you said, not a lot of doctors, they know what they know, and that's awesome. And such a amazing wealth of knowledge. Like, you won't knock that in any way, but there's also these things that they didn't consider or didn't add to med school, like your diet and how that can affect you. I've had melanoma, and I remember asking my doctor, I was like, so I heard blueberries might be really helpful. I was like, the antioxidants in blueberries, should I just be, and he was like, if you want. And I'm like, first of all, I'm happy to go home and dig through the internet and do the research, but I was really surprised that he was like, and he was like a super high level specialist in melanoma. And for him to be like, well, I'm not really sure if there's any food component that can help. And I was like, well, I'm pretty sure there are some food components that can hurt. Pretty sure my like daily diet of Oreos isn't really helpful. Like, it's just interesting that that's not something that's coming out in the conversation.
No, and I mean, I had melanoma too, and I was really scared, you know. And what I did was to kind of do what I knew I could do. I went on an anti-inflammatory diet, you know, for 60 days before they did my surgery, because I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna prepare my body. And I mean, it's not like a breast cancer surgery, it's just kind of out of my arm, but still, I was really scared. And so I was like, I'm going to do this anti-inflammatory diet so my body can be ready for this experience. And that helped me feel empowered, but it's not like my doctor was like supporting that or thought it would make a difference or anything, but it was more for me, you know?
Yeah, but that's part of it. Your mental health, your feeling like you're bringing something to the fight is also part of it. So, last question for you. Any advice for other women who are trying to merge? Because I feel like you've gone into this in a really very cool way, right? You've taken your creativity and like merged it with advocacy and business, and even the business is a nonprofit, but you've gone about it in a different way. And do you have any advice for anybody who wants to try to do that? Like, who's maybe more on the creative end of things and isn't thinking in terms of, oh, I'm going to be an advocate. They're thinking they're a creative, but they feel passionate about something. Any advice for how they can make those changes or approach them?
I mean, I think my biggest advice is like, you think like me, like I thought I was a fashion designer, which I was, but I thought my whole life, like I would have this career as a fashion designer. And so my biggest, but I don't, you know, like I don't live in New York right now. I'm not working for, you know, I don't have my own Shaney Jo fashion brand or whatever, you know, like that's what I thought it would be like. But the biggest advice is to like really physically like open your ears, like creatively, like put your hair behind your ears, like take a deep breath and like think of what does the inside of your ear look like, and open it and like and really listen, because there's signs that there's opportunities, there's invitations, there's signs, there's moments, and if you're not really listening, you're going to miss it. And if I wasn't really listening to these moments of opportunities, I wouldn't really be where I am today. And I'm so grateful that I get to use my creativity that I've had since I was born, that I had a full career as a creative, but I still get to do that in a different way, only because of like my intuition and my hearing, of like hearing intuitively and following instead of what like your parents think you should do or what your friends think you should do or what you think you should do or what you've been told to do. Is like, yeah, listen to your intuition, open your ears is like my biggest advice to everyone.
That's awesome. Okay. Is there anything else that we didn't go over that you wanted to share?
Oh my God, we could talk for hours.
I
But
know, I know. Wait, is there anything else though specifically that you're like, I need to mention this?
I mean, the last thing is just for everyone to download the Keep Abreast app. We have this beautiful app that shows you how to do your self check. It's available in 3 languages. It'll send you an automatic reminder once a month because we all forget. So download the app. If you don't know how, many people don't even know how. If you don't know how, learn how to do your self check. You don't have to be so clinical about it. You don't have to be scared. People are scared to do it. The app has great resources as well of like questions to ask when you go to the doctor, many different things. So download the Keep Abreast app. And my challenge is for everyone to share it with 8 friends. We all have a text group in some way, right? So for you today, after this, podcast, you have to download it and share it with 8 of your friends because 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer in their lifetime.
But thank you for the tip. We will definitely do that. I will share that. Thank you so much for being on here today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Shaney. Hey, this is Danielle Davies, and thanks for listening to Roar. If Shaney Jo's story reminded you that art can be activism and that education can be loud, unapologetic, and life-saving, I hope you'll pass it on. Share this episode, leave a review, or tag us online to keep the momentum going. And if you want more behind-the-scenes moments, upcoming guest previews, and stories of women rising in every arena, head to listenToRoar.com and join our newsletter. That's where the real conversation continues. Next week, I'm talking with Lauren Albrecht, Director of Advocacy and Organizing at Garden State Equality. She's not just fighting for change, she's making it happen. From legislative wins to increasing LGBTQ plus representation in politics, Lauren's reshaping what real advocacy looks like and how women are leading the charge. I can't wait for you to hear it. Till then, have a great week.